Part 3. The Uniform of Freedom Expanded. By 1975, the surf look had become a global currency. But if you look closely at the seams of the clothes from that era, you can see the tension between two worlds. One world was made of salt, sweat, and a desperate need for independence. The other was made of spreadsheets, shipping manifests, and the inevitable realization that cool is the most profitable commodity on Earth. This is the story of how the surfer's skin became a billboard. This is the birth of the industry, and depending on who you ask, the beginning of the end of the secret. The functional rebel solving the riddle. In the early 70s, the uniform was born out of pain, literally. Imagine paddling for 4 hours in a pair of stiff, canvas trunks designed for a 1950s swimming pool. By the time you walked back up the beach, your inner thighs were bleeding, a surf rash that felt like fire. For guys like Alan Green in Torquay, Australia, the solution wasn't a fashion statement, it was an engineering project. On a dusty kitchen table, amidst piles of discarded nylon, the first high-performance board short was born. They introduced the Velcro fly, replacing dangerous metal zippers that rusted in the salt. They created the Scalloped Leg, a curved cut on the outer thigh that allowed the leg to move freely during a deep bottom turn. At first, these shorts were sold out of the back of a beat-up car. There was no marketing department. There was just a surfer telling another surfer, "Hey, these don't rip your skin off." It was a peer-to-peer revolution. The mountain and wave logo of Quiksilver or the jagged Billabong script were originally just stamps of quality, like a blacksmith's mark on a sword. They were signs that the person who made this actually went into the water. The texture of a movement, corduroy and the op myth. But the surf life wasn't lived entirely in the water. Most of it was spent waiting for the tide, waiting for the wind to drop, or waiting for a friend to finish a shift at the local diner. This created the assured aesthetic. Enter Ocean Pacific op. If you want to touch the 1970s, you have to touch corduroy. The op corduroy short was the bridge between the beach and the street. They were thick, ribbed, and incredibly durable. They came in colors that mirrored the California landscape: harvest gold, dusty cinder, and Pacific blue. They were cut high, showing off tanned, muscular legs, a silhouette that screamed athlete but felt like vagabond. Paired with a pocket tee, a simple, heavy cotton shirt, it became the unofficial uniform of the American teenager. You didn't have to know how to surf to buy an op shirt. And that was the crack in the door. That was the moment the mainstream realized that you could buy the image of the ocean without ever getting your hair wet. The transition from soul to sail. As the decade progressed, the mom and pop surf shops began to change. The smell of surfboard resin was gradually replaced by the smell of new plastic and screen-printed ink. This is where we see the death of the cool. In the early 70s, wearing a town and country or a lightning bolt shirt was a secret handshake. It meant you knew who Jerry Lopez was. It meant you knew the hierarchy of the North Shore. But by 1978, the marketing machines realized that the surfer was the ultimate archetype of freedom, and freedom sells. Brands began to move their production from kitchen tables to factories in Southeast Asia. The hand-stitched quality was replaced by mass-market volume. The pro surfer emerged, covered in stickers, turning the act of riding a wave into a literal commercial break. The rebellion was being televised, and more importantly, it was being sold in suburban malls in landlocked states like Ohio and Kansas. The winter grit, sheepskin, and survival. Even the winter gear couldn't escape the cycle. In the early mornings at Rincon or Bell's Beach, surfers wore Ugg boots. To the outside world, they looked like clumsy slippers. To a surfer, they were a warm embrace after a 2-hour session in bone-chilling water. They were made of raw, inverted sheepskin, rugged, ugly, and perfect. But soon, even this utilitarian survival gear was plucked from the beach and placed on a pedestal. The rugged vagabond look, the oversized hoodies, the beanies, the salt-stained boots, was curated into a lookbook. The messy, organic style of a man who lives in his van was polished and sold as boho chic. We were witnessing the birth of lifestyle marketing. The industry stopped selling shorts. It started selling the dream of the sunset. And as the dream became more expensive, the reality of the beach became more crowded. The epilogue of Part 3, The Golden Cave. By the end of the 1970s, the surf industry was a multi-million-dollar titan. The pioneers who started with sewing machines were now sitting in boardrooms. There is a bittersweet irony here. The clothes became better, more flexible, faster drying, more colorful, but something was lost in the weave. The uniform of freedom had become a costume. The surly, sunburnt rebel of 1970 had been replaced by the surfer brand of 1979. As we move into the next chapter, we'll see how this newly wealthy tribe of nomads used their money and their image to claim the road, turning the Volkswagen Combi into a rolling cathedral of the marketing age.